Hey, it's Jacq. So today I'm going to show you guys how to make this macrame curtain. I'm just showing you the first half of the pattern this week. So if you want to see the rest of the pattern, subscribe and I'll show you how I finish it next week for part 2. This week I'm just going to show you guys this part of the pattern, how I made the loops to attach it onto a curtain rod, and the first part of the pattern, which is this kind of like triangle flower petal type of vibe. Yeah, let's get into it. The materials that you'll need are macrame cord, scissors, and craft glue, and also something like a clothes rack or a curtain rod or something to hang your project over while you work on it. You can also get creative and like string it across a door frame or a couple of chairs. So you don't really need to like go out and buy a rack if you don't have one. Measure across how wide you want your design to be and cut a piece of cord that's that width. You want to measure next your length for your working cord, and I don't have a measurement tool or anything like that because I found that a better way to measure is with like this rule of thumb that I use, where I take the end of cord and I measure the length that I want the final curtain to be. So for me, that's going to be this length of the mirror, and I take the end of cord, I measure the length, and then I fold that piece of cord back on itself, and then I fold it again so that the final cord I'm measuring is 4 times the final length we want the project to be. So that's what I did to measure the pieces of working cord, and they're all going to be this same length measurement. And I have, let me think, I have 24 final pieces of working cord. And so because you measured, like, your width might be longer than my width, so you might want to add more working cords and measure more working cords to cover the width across, you know what I mean? Then to start off the pattern, we are making the loops. So to start off, we just make a chain of square knots, and if you have never done a square knot before, or like this is the first macrame project you're stumbling on, I have a slower, short version of every knot and pattern that I use in my tutorials. So if I'm going too fast in this video, go ahead and check the description and I'll have more specific knots and patterns that are a lot slower and easier to follow if you've like never done this knot before. So you just make 12 square knots. And then you take that chain and you loop it around your curtain rod, or if you're working like across chairs, then you just make a loop. And then you make a square knot back where you started, and you want to take the ends of the square knot dangling on the ends. You want to feed those through the curtain, so that way when you make the square knot, it's attaching it back onto that point where you started. So then you just make as many loops across as you want or need. And then we go into the beginning pattern. So I take the last and the first 8 pieces of cord and I just push them to the side so that I don't include them in this pattern. And so that leaves enough pieces of cord for me to make 3 groups of 7 square knots. So if you used a different measurement of your width and you added more working chords than I started with, then you want to count how many working chords you have aside from the 8 that you put aside, and then see what that's a denomination of. So if you're following what I'm following, you don't need to do the math. Just know that you're gonna start off this next pattern by making 7 square knots. And then you make a triangle of square knots by making like the next row underneath that 7 a little bit less. So 6 square knots, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, and then 2, and then 1 until it's a triangle. And so then when you finish that triangle, you move on, you make another triangle and another one until you have completed the pattern across the width. And then I added a border along this triangle pattern just to make it look a little bit more pretty and detailed. And to make that border pattern, you cut one piece of cord that's going to be the length of the triangle, and then you cut another one for the other side of the triangle, and then you double half hitch knot around that piece of cord so that it makes like more of a clean edge. And after you do that, at the tip of the triangle, I make a berry knot. And you make a berry knot by making 3 square knots, and then you feed the middle ends of cord through so that it's kind of looped back on itself, similar to how we started off the pattern with the loops to tie on the rod. And then you make another square knot. Since like all these working chords are so long, I found that to make the berry knot, if I include those pieces of cord, those shorter ones that I just added and double half hitch knotted over, if those shorter pieces are the middle of the berry knot, the ends that I feed through, it's so much easier than having the really long ends be the one that I feed through. And then this is where you can kind of see that it kind of is going to start to be like a flower petal type of vibe, because in the spaces in between the triangles, we make another triangle. You want to fill in the middle triangle until the bottom width is 4 square knots, and then start making it smaller so that it starts to look like a tip of a petal coming through behind the other two. You know what I mean? Like there's layers of petals. And I just did the exact same thing to finish the border. I added another piece of cord, double half hitch knotted, and then I made a berry knot. And that's it for the first part of this pattern. So now yours should look similar to mine if you were following my tutorial. And go ahead and subscribe if you want to see the rest of it. Next week we're going to do the next part of the pattern, which is going to be a bunch of chain patterns to fill in the bottom of the curtain. And then we get to hang it up together and see how it looks. So thanks for watching, and let me know what you thought of the tutorial. If you want to connect with me on socials, I'll put my link tree in the description too. Had so much fun hanging out with you guys, and I hope you have a great week. Bye.